feel like we've done this stuff already.
Good evening. I'd like to call the special meeting of the Board of Selectmen to order. It is now 7:30 on March 24th, 2015. First order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. I'll ask Selectman Balistraci to lead us, please, in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Cole. Item 2, public forum, limited to 3 minutes on any agenda item. Anybody wishing to address the board on any agenda item? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to item 3, which is to receive a report from the town engineer about the temporary closing of the transfer station from Mr. Portley, the town engineer. Jim?
Good evening. This is no part of the forum. We're going to grill you. Sorry about that. Good evening.
Good evening.
At the request of DDR, they're developing that site on what is commonly referred to as the rock pile. There was a transition that's necessary to change the elevation. They had to reconstruct Route 1 so that they had to open up the sight lines so that approaching traffic from the center of town could be seen visibly for turns and so forth as part of their operations. In the fall, they lowered, for want of a better term, the easterly side of the road. And now they have to lower the westerly side, but on the westerly side there's a 12-inch gas main, and there's a very important communications duct bank there that'll take a lot of time. So what they're trying to do is coordinate with the utilities and just put all the traffic for the time being on the east side, the lower section of road as you've driven on it now, to allow them to relocate the gas main and the duct bank. It's going to take approximately, I'd say 2 months. So what they've asked us to do, and I brought this before the Board of Selectmen once before, is to change our driveway location, which is on the west side of our property, and at their cost, they want to relocate it to the east side of our property. It's a temporary situation. They will take care of all the construction, all the signage, everything that'll be part of this transition. And what that'll do is they'll allow that driveway on the westerly side of our property to be coming out Route 1 at a lower elevation. This they want to do over the weekend, starting Sunday. They work Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. So they will ask us to close the transfer station on Monday and Tuesday. Wednesday we're closed anyway, and then we will reopen on Thursday at the new driveway location. Proper signage will be in place. It will be just a 3-day event, basically, as far as the townspeople are concerned. The only 2 days all spring that'll be closed will be next Monday, the 30th, and Tuesday, the 31st. I think it's a reasonable request for the scope of the development out there. It should not interrupt our operations at this point significantly. If it was done in a month, when people are doing their spring cleanup, it could be a problem, but right now it isn't, especially Monday and Tuesdays. So I would recommend the Board of Selectmen approve their request, and then we can authorize them to close the existing driveway down and relocate to the easterly side of the property with a new driveway location.
Do we need to make a motion?
Yeah.
Do we need to move it, or we're just?
I don't really know. I wanted to bring you abreast of what it was. I don't know. Is there really need a motion? But if you think it's appropriate, I recommend that you approve it as a motion.
Yeah,
All right, then I recommend that we pursuant to your advice and plan that you laid out, that we allow for the temporary closing of the transfer station the Monday and Tuesday, since it's closed Wednesday anyway.
I'll second it.
Second that. Any discussion on the motion?
Only that will the signs go up tomorrow?
The signs will go up over the weekend.
As soon as possible to give people some notice.
Yeah. The signs?
Yeah.
The closure signs went up today.
Okay.
In anticipation
Okay.
that it would be approved.
Yeah, as long as we give people as much notice as we
Yeah.
can.
And if it's something on the side.
And it also will be posted on the website and our Facebook page. Okay, good.
Very good.
Okay. Any further comments or discussion on the motion? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, unanimous. Thank you, James.
Thank you.
You see that brutality?
Item 4, remove from the table and take possible action on the bonding resolutions as prepared by bond counsel. So first of all, we need a motion to remove from the table the action on the bonding resolution. Do I have a motion to remove from the table? Motion was made, second. All those in favor? Aye. Sheila, you want to come to the table, please? Okay, this is, thank you. Our Finance Director, Sheila Bolano.
Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening.
Hi. The last time we discussed this, there were 5 bonding resolutions. We've now combined 2 of them, so there are 4.
Oh, okay, so they
Okay.
did.
Yes, so you have 4 resolutions now. And what I did is I prepared a report that I've done in the past, and actually behind it are the prior 2 referendums and the bond authorizations that were approved then. But on top is what you are going to approve tonight, along with the Board of Eds. This schedule is the town's, but you're going to approve the Board of Eds as well tonight. So we have $2,205,000 for various town facility improvements. There's no change from the last time you saw the resolutions, and the projects are listed. Would you like me to read them? No. Okay. The second one is the one we combined. It's the Inland Road reconstruction and related equipment. We added the grader to that bond authorization, so it includes the road reconstruction and the equipment that's related to the road work for $1,280,000. And then we have the school facility improvements and future project engineering for $3,595,000, and the various school security and technology upgrades for $1,695,000. Those were not changed from the last time you saw them. So you have 4 resolutions.
Okay, so those are the 4 bonding resolutions that are proposed to go before the voters this April, right?
Yes.
First of all, the town meeting on April 7th, which we'll handle in a moment,
Right.
and then to referendum on April 21st. So we
Yes.
need a motion to approve these resolutions.
So moved.
Second.
Second, any discussion on those, on the motion? Cole, you had something?
No.
Okay. Any, no discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Approved, okay. Now we have a second. Number 5 is to remove from the table and take possible action on the annual town budget meeting and budget referendum. So first, we need a motion to remove from the table, okay?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Sheila, you want to brief us on that one?
Well, this is just setting the town meeting date, which is just
Is April 7th?
April 7th, and the referendum date is the 21st.
Okay, and that would be to, first of all, to discuss at the town meeting the annual town budget, and also to handle the 4 resolutions which we just passed.
Yes.
Okay? I need a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Anything else you
I
want to bring
didn't
to
know
our
if you wanted
attention?
to mention about the way everything's going to be on one page.
Yeah, it's a good point. Okay, I have, Sheila and I have worked with the registrars, and instead of having a 2-sided ballot, because we would have had 6 questions, but now we have 5, but we still would needed a 2-sided ballot. We have now work with the registrars, and we'll now have a one-sided ballot,
Legal size.
legal size, and I think it'll be more efficient and will cause less confusion. Mike, do you have a copy of that? Okay, so I think it's a big improvement. Okay? Everybody see that? Yep. Want to comment on that, Sheila, at all?
No, I think it's much better, easier to read, and
Okay.
we've worked on it.
Good. All right. Anything else want to bring to our attention?
All set.
Okay, anybody? Okay. Thank you, Sheila.
Well, we're gonna have to sign that tonight, right?
Yes, I have it in front of me, and I'll pass it around. If I don't get it signed before you leave, I'll get in trouble with the clerk. All right. Okay, thank you. Item 6, consider and take possible action on the East River Preserve Deer Management Plan. I'm going to ask Harvey Smith, who was the chairman of the Deer Management Study Committee, to come before us and give us a brief report from that committee. Good morning. We used to have morning meetings.
I hope I didn't scare everyone away.
No, I didn't. Good evening, Harvey.
Well, in anticipation of a number of the issues and questions and problems that were presented to our board, to our committee over the years, I wrote down sort of a little plan of presentation to make it simple and hit the highlights. And Joe, you just handed me this letter that you received this afternoon, and I've just read it. And I'm glad I did this, because somebody will be watching the tape, many people will, and most of what is in that letter is because they haven't understood the plan as it was written and the intent and the purpose, the purposeful approach that we took, where the plan itself is an experimental plan, a place to start, open for review on a 3-year basis, open to be modification, even open to be terminated. So when you read a letter like this is like coming from somebody who's not aware of anything that we took care of in a 3-year process to get to where we are tonight. But I still would like to just follow through this for the record, for the tape, and for the Board of Selectmen. The East River Management Plan came out in 2011, so this has been a process for about 5 years. What was interesting is in that plan, they knew, and they had already done some survey work out there as part of that plan to document overbrowsing. And one of the things that they ear-tagged that would need further consideration, even after that plan would be accepted, was the fact that a deer management plan had to be one of those further to look at issues. So the Board of Selectmen, in drafting or agreeing and approving that plan, set aside the time and effort to appoint a committee that would look further into what that plan asked to have done. And subsequently, 2 of their overriding goals as part of their major goal involved management of wildlife. Number 2 of their 8. 1, to conserve a diverse and healthy suite of habitats, and another one to support healthy balance of wildlife. 2 that were approved, both of those were approved, and the voting on that can't be achieved unless you have a deer management plan. I mean, you can't have both. And there's such an overwhelming database of the potential that deer have to alter habitat. This isn't to say they're going to destroy every habitat, but the potential is there. And there's 2 ways to do this. I mean, obviously, you need an active land management plan, and this means that a hands-off policy is not what you want. You really need an active management plan to look at what you're going to do and what objectives you hope to solve and all this. And there are really 2 approaches you can take to this: a proactive and a reactive. You can do, number 1, you need to start with a plan and collect data as you go forward, a plan that you can modify, you can improve, or you can cancel. The other option, obviously, which is suggested in the letter, Joe, that you handed me, is collect data, which can go on for a century. I was a scientist for 40 years, and I have yet to find a biologist that can tell me how many deer per acre there are, or all the specifics. You can research scientifically till you're out of time. That's one way to handle it, and that is true. You need data, but you can collect it as you go along. So the second possibility is you wait until you have all the data and then implement a plan. Okay, well, remediation of destroyed habitat can take decades, as each of you know. It's a lot better, no matter what we're discussing or looking at, to take care of something before it's destroyed and then try to fix it. I mean, that's one way that we should consider and look at this. But our charge, the committee's charge, was to develop a safe and practical deer management plan that was consistent with the 8 goals of the East River Management Plan. And we took that very seriously. And as you all know, it took us 2 years, I would like to think, to get it right. Because when I say get it right, we're providing and proposing and submitting a plan that can be modified and canceled, as I've already repeated. This isn't how it's going to be, even when you get down to the number of people that might be part of the process. And Joe, you and I have discussed a lot of these aspects. So even though there are 18 pieces to the hunting, and I hate to even use that word because this isn't a hunting activity, this is a deer management activity. There's a huge difference, but the public understandably can go either way with that. But it's a lot more difficult now for wildlife biologists and experts, and the town was incredibly lucky to have Susan Clark, a renowned wildlife conservationist, on the committee. She's traveled the world to address these issues internationally. So we were really lucky to have somebody of her capability and qualities. And Gary, you know, you sat through most of our meetings, and which we appreciated. But ecosystem diversity-related management decisions are becoming more difficult to make, and it's kind of interesting, and I'm not trying to be funny, but early on in the 17th, 18th century, our relationships to wildlife revolved around 2 things. They were either good, utilitarian, or bad. They were dangerous. They were going to threaten us or eat our livestock or kill us, wolves or whatever. Since the 19th century, more recently, and up to 2000, just before 2000, a study over at Yale, Dr. Keller, focused on this, and we relate to wildlife so differently now that there are, instead of 2 values that the early people related to, now there's 8. Humanistic, moralistic, ecology, scientific, naturalistic. And all of these make the wildlife specialists, it gives them more of a challenge. It doesn't mean they can't get to the right answer and satisfy the goal and the objectives and give the right information to boards like yourselves. But what's interesting is if our car breaks down, we take it to a mechanic, and we trust the mechanic. If we get sick, we go to a doctor, and we trust the doctor, and maybe get another opinion, which is sometimes valuable. If a wildlife biologist is called in to address a major ecological threat, as you would have with an over deer population, their attitude is, maybe we should discuss it. And it's natural that we have these other relationships with wildlife. We've come a long way. I mean, it's good that we just don't have those 2 simple things anymore. But that's the situation that we have. We heard from experts. I asked everyone on the committee to think of an expert, somebody that they would like to listen to, ask questions to, and then follow it up the next meeting with a discussion of what we heard. We heard from all kinds of people, wonderful people, and experts. I mean, these from DEP, the Yale Forestry School, the Water Company, Audubon Greenwich, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and we didn't leave any rocks unturned. We heard from everybody, hoping to get pros and cons, people who have tried this approach before, what were their problems, what were their successes, what were their criticisms, and how has it worked. After all of this, nearly 2 years, we obviously have reached, as you know, you've got in your hands our recommendations. And the overriding one, based upon overwhelming historic, scientific, ecological, and experimental evidence, deer certainly, without question, have the capacity, capability, potential to destroy or alter significantly biological diversity. We all have to accept that. I mean, that's realistic without debate. But taking into account, and so based on that, then we decided, through much discussion and debate, that we needed to have an actively reduced monitored system through bow hunting administered by the town in compliance with deer regulations. But this is accompanied with ecological monitoring, which should be undertaken with deer exclosures and go into the future, as we're not just doing something and walking away from it. We're doing something to see if it works. And if it needs a little tweaking along the way, it's going to be modified, corrected, or after this is going to be, the program's going to be reviewed on a triennial basis to see where we're at after 3 years, after 6 years. If still nothing's happening, let's modify it. After maybe another review, drop it if you don't need it. Who knows? Maybe 10 years out from now, there'll be a disease knocking deer populations way down and you won't even need this. So we have to be open to what we've got today, and we have to be open to what's possibly going to be on the table in the future, when none of us are seated around this table, and there's another whole group that's going to have, whoever follows Kevin, bringing in the Conservation Commission's 3-year annual report that will continue to monitor what's going on. So the committee does strongly recommend periodic reports of systematic monitoring, and this will be provided to the selectmen. Some of it has to be provided before the initiation of the program, and that's even in our report. There has to be a baseline report by the Conservation Commission that would confer and verify what the original report said was overbrowsing occurring at that time. So there has to be that before this can even be initiated, followed up by these 3-year reports. And that's really important. And the one thing I would like to share, and I'm open for any questions that anyone would have, but one of the people that spoke to us, and they were all excellent, and I know I'm repeating myself, but they really were, but the director of the Audubon Greenwich Center came to speak to us, Karen Dixon, and her situation was exactly, I say exactly, but maybe it was even more intense than ours. When it came to be that they had to protect rare plants and lost birds, ground nesters and low shrub nesters, they were forced to consider a deer management removal plan. Now this is tough when you're running the Audubon Society program. It's now 10 years in running. They had tremendous opposition from the public, but they had to do what was right. And they made the choice to go with this. And they have 650 acres. It took them 2 years, almost to the month what it's taken us to get to your table tonight, to finally work this through and get it functional. They partnershiped with bow hunters who were brought in that have to do ecological monitoring and annual reports and work with them, and everybody's excited about this. The opposition has gotten less each year, she said. Now they're 10 years into the program. Everybody, except obviously those out on the extreme, still have their right to their opinion, and I'll never question that. But the program has really worked, and it's neat to hear from people like that had the same issues and have put a program in place and it's worked. They haven't modified it. Everybody's happy with it, or almost everybody's happy with it. And it's sort of like, we don't need to reinvent the wheel here. We don't have to wait until you have every little bit of hardcore science that you can publish in Scientific American or something. That's not necessary. The questions raised in this letter are valid, and I appreciated reading the letter. Yeah, it wasn't our charge to, when we got to the hunting aspect, or reducing the deer population through bow hunting is maybe a little better way to put it, because we don't want to go off on the perceptions associated with the word hunting. But we didn't get into, okay, we're leaving it open, and Joe and I, we've talked about this. Now it comes to the point where, all right, we've got the plan, we've got it proposed, but it's open for all modifications that anyone wishes to put in here. Now, one of the questions on this letter was they don't even talk about posting the signs. These, of course, when this activity is going to take place, there's going to be signs. So, yeah, you know, these are all things that need to be worked out. We're to the point now, okay, we've done our job, and now it's up to forming a little subcommittee or a group of people that will monitor the 18 aspects that we've listed as potentially important. And there could be others. And that list may go to 30 before it actually is functional. But talking to the good contact people at the water company or even Audubon, you know, how you're going to put together the lottery system or select those that are qualified and do all the background checks. And when you look at what the plan included, no hunting on weekends, a 30-day limit to the whole season, bows only, from a stand only, you're shooting towards the ground. We took the path of the absolute strictest safety regulations we could pass on to the Board of Selectmen. And if school is out, it's closed. I mean, but all of these things can be posted on signs. There isn't anything in this letter that cannot be addressed, other than the fact that we can't do science research until, you know, we go back to time. I mean, that just isn't going to be the case. So, I mean, if you have any questions, I mean, geez, I'm more than happy to address anything. And I've very quickly gone over this. In an absence of a public forum, and any questions that I thought would be raised here that I'd be happy to address. But I give it to you to make the corrections and modifications that will be coming your way. And Kevin, we've already discussed, and he knows what's going to fall in his lap. This will be partnership with the Conservation Commission, the Guilford Conservation Commission, for continued monitoring and report giving to you or the next board. Yeah, the one thing, and I don't want to run down the 18 items, but for one thing, they have to be 250 feet at least from any marked trail. And you guys have all read this, so I'm kind of saying this for the tape, I suppose. But, and the stands have to be at least 250 feet away from each other, and then, as I already repeated, no weekends, no hunting when school's open. We can have signs posting all of this. They have to be out of the forest by 11:30 a.m., so this isn't an all-day thing. I'm really happy with a couple of things here. One, the committee that I chaired, these people were wonderful, and it wasn't a group, and I want to be clear on this. The selection was done by a committee that you guys appointed to pick our committee. And the worst thing that could have happened is if we had 9 people that all felt the same and we walked out of the room after a week. That wasn't the case. That's why it took 2 years. We had differences of opinion. We had debates and discussion and agreements and disagreements. And Gary, you witnessed some of these. And that's good, and I respect that. It's been a part of my professional career with the government, as I was invited to Audubon to give talks on harvest of different wildlife forms, and these different attitudes that are involved. And controversy helps make the final product. You don't want a bunch of people that think the same way, because you're going to miss a lot of things that are critical to having a functional plan that we're going to be proud of, that this community, we want this community to support this. Once this is initiated, after Kevin writes his report and you guys modify it, we want their ears and their eyes. We want reports. If they see something that's not right, let us know. I mean, we're here to make this work for the community. And that's all I ever wanted as chairman on the committee, and the committee was awesome. They worked hard on this. So I will close there and answer any questions. Joe.
Harvey, thank you very much for that report. Before you continue, I just wanted to mention, Harvey referenced a letter several times. A letter was handed to the Selectmen's office about 4:25 this afternoon by, I guess it was a young lady who presented it to one of the clerks of the Selectmen's office who couldn't make the meeting tonight, and in lieu of public comment, did present a letter, which is part of the record, and I have handed it to our clerk. So that's the letter that Harvey's referenced, so it will become part of the record. Any questions from the board on Harvey's
First of all,
report?
Harvey,
Yeah.
thank you and the committee. I've talked to a lot of the committee members along the way. You guys really spent a lot of time on this, and Gary would give us almost monthly reports on the progress you're making and the challenges, so I really applaud the efforts. Obviously, we've gone now a period of time since acquiring the property to date, and we needed to do the study at the time, but how is...
5 years.
I know, so that's the question I have is what it... obviously this will hope to make people understand the need for this, but how is your population now? I mean, I can say what I think because I see challenges, but...
It's high. I will say it's high. I'm not saying it grew for a while. I used to get calls from George Goss, and he'd look out in the morning and say, hey, how's that committee doing? I got 5 deer on my front lawn right now. I've had 5 in my backyard on Route 1 a few months ago. I had one 3 weeks ago, standing at my mailbox, checking the traffic out, trying to decide how to cross the road. I read a report in the latest Connecticut Wildlife that showed or suggested a decline this year, which is interesting, in the statewide. But Guilford and Madison are still 2 of the highest populated zones in deer density. And the state has actually, to encourage more hunting and harvesting and culling, you can take more, you can even bait the animals now. They've made a lot of additions to increase the harvest rate. Obviously, the importance of a culling program has been enhanced because habitat destruction, fragmentation, we keep building houses and interrupting things, and we've lost the big predators. So when it comes to what would have normally held the population in check, those 3 factors are incredible in releasing the potential. Will it just increase geometrically? Probably not. I mean, you could make arguments that it's at some point maybe going to be somewhat self-regulating, but that's going to be too high for the ground nesters and the understory nesters.
Yeah.
A lot of people can walk through a forest, and if they see a tree, they're happy. Ecologically, there's a lot going on, and we've sat in this very room and debated vernal pools and things. There's a lot involved with ecological integrity and diversity. And it's high. I know it's high. Paul knows it's high. He's been out there and watched what's going on. It is high. And as I referred to before, that 2011 report documented that there was over-browsing. When we took our field trip, it was obvious when we took the field trip as part of this commission. Over-browsing continues. I can't see that there's any good reason not to. It's just, like I say, you have 2 options. Start a plan and work with that plan. Make it as safe as possible. That was our overriding. And that's why it didn't pass when it was at the Board of Selectmen 2 years ago. That was really the issue that, we really want this other committee to look further into it. And we did. And the only accidents that we could uncover, and we don't have Bill with us, the conservation officer who sat on our committee here tonight, but the only injuries through deer hunting were people that fell out of the tree stand. So, Cindy, there's a lot of deer out there. We could argue, obviously you could fill this auditorium and argue, do you have to or not? You don't have to, but then all right, so we're going to sacrifice not harvesting or culling individuals of deer or killing some deer, but you're going to, out of sight and out of mind, be killing other species.
Yeah, no,
And that's the issue.
Or hunting has sometimes a bad connotation to it. I've read the report and the recommendations, and we've discussed it. And it seems to me, but to me it's which you and your committee have suggested, is extremely controlled. Can you expand upon that? I mean, you limited to a certain amount of hunters. You've limited to a certification of hunters. Can you kind of expand about what your committee is recommending? The type of
I'm having a
hunters?
little trouble picking up all of this, Joe.
Okay, you can't hear me, or okay. Can you expand about how we would go about choosing the hunters and the amount of hunters and
How we go through the whole process.
selection process.
The selection
Yeah,
process,
okay.
the testing process.
what you're recommending here? Can you expand upon that?
The two recommendations that I would make, I believe, John, the contact from the water, I'm trying to remember his last name. You may have that in your
I
thing.
do have his name there, but I guess to help answer the question here, the plan calls for 20 hunters to be accepted in the program by a lottery system. They have to have a valid Connecticut archery deer permit. Talking with the state today, in order to get the archery deer permit, you actually have to take a 6-hour safety course in archery before you even can apply for your safety permit application there. So right now, there's only 20 people would be allowed in there. The 20 people, then, once they're accepted, would have to take a proficiency testing by a certified bow instructor and hit a target of about 10-inch diameter circle at 60 feet away or 60 yards. The test location we haven't quite determined, but I talked with the water company, and they test 160 people over 3 days, and our 20 people might be able to fit in with them, but we have to do more discussions with them on that part, because some of our same people may be testing for their properties also. So that's something that's being looked into. For the hunt, once they're accepted, there'd be a pre-hunting meeting to go over the safety procedures, review the boundaries, the rules and regulations. At that time, the passes will be distributed for their vehicles. And as indicated before, the hunt is a 1 month long, October 15th through November 15th. It's a Monday through Friday. It's from the hunters enter the property at 4:30 a.m. and has to leave the property by 11:30 a.m. And it's basically starts at sunrise.
Kevin, you said you would accept 20 applicants. How many hunters might be on the property at any given point? Is there any limitation to that?
There is no limitation about that besides, there is no limitation besides the distance between tree stands there. I don't think they would really want to be close together. We're 580 acres up there.
So potentially at any given point, there
Potentially you can have up to...
could be 20?
Could be 20, and that's probably the beginning of the season, and as they capture what their tag limit is, they won't be back on the property. They could
I just wanted to get a feel for how many it is.
Yeah, so you could have the
And is it
beginning,
the entire property that will be open?
be the entire property, be 250 feet away from property lines and stuff, but they're pretty much be in the wooded areas on a tree stand pointing down, so they wouldn't be by the field area.
But, okay.
Charles, my recollection is that this number is less dense than the water company density. There are some statewide density numbers that were used and how many hunters you can have on a given acreage of property, and this is less dense. And
I just
think
didn't
as
know
you-
if it was a different number than the 20. I mean, I haven't really thought through the density issue
Right.
of it all, but between all of, I mean, what is it, 600 acres, right?
Yeah, and you're 15 feet up and you're shooting down, so it was
And
it was
that's going
deemed
to
to be a pretty
self-regulate
safe.
itself to a certain extent, I would imagine.
It will, people, first get out there, the big excitement is beginning of the hunting season, and then their excitement kind of dwindles down as the
I think it'll be
month moves on.
self-regulating at a point. Success is, if they're not being successful, you'll start out maybe with 20, if that's what's approved and that's what's allowed, and you may end up with 10, who knows, the last part of the season.
Are the tree stands already there?
No.
No, so everything has to be built.
They have to bring, they clip on the portable
They do.
manuf,
I've never had.
there'll be a
Get 'em at
manufactured,
Cabela's and-
Oh, they put their own.
there'll be a manufactured tree stand which clips onto the tree.
Okay.
They can leave it up, but they have to remove the ladder portion so nobody can
Right.
climb up into the tree stand.
Okay, all right, so they could have their own, then, okay,
They
yeah.
have their own, it meets certain safety requirements.
Yeah.
If you build something, who knows what the safety requirements are, so you have your own, it's up in the tree, there's, does less damage because it's made to kind of wrap around, ratchet onto the tree there.
Okay, I get it.
But even with those 18 items that we've done our best to framework this, can be modified, added to, deleted, whatever.
This might be a good segue for Kevin to present the report of the Conservation Commission, because this board has asked the Conservation Commission to review the recommendations of the Deer Study Committee. Kevin, would you like to report on that,
Definitely.
please?
Pull that one up here. Of course, technology doesn't like me.
Well, that's a short
Oh,
version.
please.
That's a short.
Does the,
Shelley,
I have a letter from Shelley Green, also have a letter here which I'll pass out to you, which is sort of similar to what was discussed already. But Shelley Green from the Conservation Commission chairperson, she couldn't be here tonight, submitted a letter to the commission here, indicated on October 22nd, 2014, the Conservation Commission meeting, the commission voted to endorse the East River Management Preserve Deer Management Plan and move it forward. As part of the endorsement, the commission would like to remind the Board of Selectmen that an ecological survey needs to be conducted by a consultant before the deer management season and every 3 years thereafter, as recommended by the plan. It is important to note that with the approval of the plan, the town would need to provide public outreach regarding this program, additional staff and volunteer time to process and approve the hunters, along with long-term monitoring of the program. So the commission does understand and address one of the needs of that resident which submitted you a letter today, of basically the public outreach portion of the plan, of notifying the neighbors, posting signs at the entrances going into the property during this period of time, and probably a couple weeks ahead of time so people are aware of what's going on. And we probably have to look at, as we get closer to an article in the paper as we come in towards October, and notification on our webpage. So the plan's here, but the plan gives a lot of work for commission and staff to do to get this thing up and running, in terms of getting applications out, and finding a way to get it circulated to the public that wants it. Do we have it at the Selectmen's office to come pick it up? Do we also have it on the webpage where they can come download it and mail it in to us? So there's stuff that we need to start working on once this thing gets approved. To answer this question Cynthia had here regarding the the number of deer on the property, the Ike Station in New Haven has been doing a study on the property of timber harvest area. As part of that study, they're looking at replanting oak trees on the property. But they wanted to know, will these trees be eaten by the deer? So they actually conducted a deer study and planted 300 small saplings of white pine trees on the property, or white spruce trees on the property there, in different locations. Some were in cages, some were without cages. And all the unprotected saplings were nibbled on and chewed down. And the ones that were in the cages, which grew above the cage, were eaten down. So there is, and this is actually a species of tree that the deer aren't really eager to eat. It's one of those last resort green plants that they will eat.
Hungry.
And they're hungry and went after these trees out there. And that study was done in 2013. So we have the ECOS report doing baseline 2011, or published in 2011. We have the recent thing done by the Ag Station 2013. So we are continuing the study on the property there. And if you don't mind, I have a letter, myself and the commission, which I'll pass around, and the bottom one is for Tracy there.
So we probably need to get this started sooner rather than later, right, Harvey?
Yes.
Yeah, because the time to start the lottery, get the certification done, and I'm not sure if we can even meet up with the water company time period, because they're actually looking at doing their lottery and certification very shortly, and potentially beginning in June for their certification, which is about a month earlier than they usually do, which is usually July.
Are you hoping to get it done for this, to get it going? For
We're
the
hoping to
fall,
get
right?
the going for the fall and having the studies done by the October hunt period of time there.
But do you have enough time to do a study before?
The recommendation that we have is a, and I'll jump down to, because the beginning part of the letter I have is similar stuff that Harvey discussed here. But the most of this can be, we can get it done talking with the Scott Williams at the Ag Station, and with looking at other deer studies, talking with Shelley at the Nature Conservancy, who has talked with colleagues of hers which do these hunts on Nature Conservancy property. Is the recommendation is a photo documentation of several study areas on the property. I kind of looked at a map this afternoon and figured out approximately 12 locations that can be studied on the property with different varying habitats on the property. And getting in there probably end of June, July, when vegetation's growing and before the drought hits, we can do the photo documentation of these areas, get several enclosures or exclosures up, which we can use as template areas or control groups to say where the we know the deer can't get in, and we can tell that if growth doesn't happen in one area, we look at the control group and see if there's any growth in that, and figure out, is it due to the amount of sunlight, the soil, other circumstances. If we see growth next to it in a controlled area and chewed down in the other area, we know we still have a problem. So we'll be kind of doing a combination, probably 3 or 4 of these exclosures spread on the property, different habitat areas, along with some photo documentations, maybe 12 areas. I still have to work that out, and the Ag Station is we're hoping that the Ag Station will work with us at laying out these areas and maybe helping with some of this documentation that we need to do.
So you can have these set up by summer?
Yeah, the closures, if you approve it, we can start looking into getting those put up. And it's about a 10 by 10, 12, 15 by 15 area. It's a matter of ordering the fencing, some posts, or even tacking it around some trees to hold it up.
Can I chip in?
Sure, of course.
First of all, I would like to thank Harvey and his committee, and I did sit through a number of those, for their patience and collegiality. I mean, it was really a very interesting and wide-ranging group that spent a lot of thoughtful time, and I congratulate them on their job. One of the recommendations is the initial study. Kevin apparently has talked to the Ag Station today, and I spoke with them yesterday, and I believe that they will work with us to do the initial study and presumably the follow-up in 3 years, and help prepare some of the enclosures. The other factor that should be brought up is we've discussed, and I think everybody here knows that we have posted a couple of part-time jobs for land stewardship, and those that have listened to me at budget meetings know that I've said it's land is the second largest asset that this town owns, and we need to dedicate some resources. So there are some two open postings for part-time land steward and assistant land steward reporting to Kevin. That will provide some of the manpower to do this.
Job descriptions for that.
Both monitor this, and the jobs are set up so that they don't have to, so that it's a part-time job, but some weeks can be larger than others, and presumably during hunting season, they'll be heavily involved with the hours to monitor that process and set it up. It will be, they will be paid from the land acquisition and management budget. And therefore, I think is realistic, and Joe and I had talked about the fact that, you know, people ought to be aware that there are resources to support Kevin in his job. I would suggest that Kevin and staff will prepare most of this, but I would hope that a couple members or more of Harvey's committee might work with him to do that.
Caught those last couple of meetings.
Yeah.
They didn't want to sit on another committee
Right.
and survive what we went through.
But they might
We do
advise.
have volunteers willing, and get
Right.
back to your question, Joe, there's a couple of names, and I dug out one here, the key person at the water company. But there are a couple of committee members who are willing to advise and assist in this whole setup process, which would be very
good,
key.
yeah. Along with yourself, right?
And if I'm not planting pumpkins, I'll show up and help.
So do we make a motion?
And I will say, I will remain as liaison to this group and attend all the meetings as I have been all along. So it will get done, but, you know, I will also say, if it's not ready, if it's not complete, if it's not safe, it won't be this year.
No, I agree.
You know, and I think that's very clear.
That's how we presented it.
Yeah.
That is exactly our intent here, to do
so,
the best
you know,
job we can, and it's a plan.
I think what we're all concerned with is safety. I think we've talked directly to the police department. I'm sure, you know, we'll refer to them and, you know, they'll get a look at the final plan, and if they're not comfortable with it, that's a problem, so.
In that regard, before a motion is made, I was going to bring it up during discussion, but since you did mention the police department, I had a discussion as early as late, I guess I should say, as this afternoon with the deputy chief, soon-to-be chief of police, Deputy Chief Hutchinson. He's reviewed the plan, and he's fine with it. He made one suggestion, is that when we do issue the permits, if you call it such, to the 20 hunters, that he be informed of their names and phone numbers and contact information.
That's all part of it.
And
That was part of the rationale there.
and I support that 100%.
License numbers, cell phones.
And I think that should be part written into the plan, and also the two steward and the assistant land steward, and have their contact information. I told them they would be provided with town cell phones and have their information. And I think that's more than reasonable request, and it's part of the safety issue, which you mentioned. Other than that, he's fine with it.
And once this is approved by the board here, DEP will notify them, so they like to know where managed hunts are, so they would put their officers in the area also to keep an eye on what's going on.
They'll be a real asset through this whole process, and having Bill on the committee
Yep.
has really been a key player in this whole process.
Good. Good. And I thank your committee and yourself for all the hard work. I know it's a tough task.
Our committee appreciates your appreciation.
You sound like the AT&T ad.
Gary, you want to make a motion?
I'd be happy to make a motion that, do you have my report? So I can get the exact wording. I would make a motion that we that we approve the East River Preserve Deer Management Plan as presented, obviously with the understanding that the final details of the deer management have to be worked out, and will be reviewed at a later date with appropriate parties. But we should approve the plan and move it forward.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? I have one question. With your motion, the comments I made about
The chief.
about the notification of the hunters and that, is that
Oh, yeah.
included in there?
Yeah, and I think in some form, once the details of the plan, who's going to monitor what, and, where the testing is going to take place and all this sort of thing, I think it should come back before this board, at least to look at it.
Okay, that's fine.
I think everybody here probably wants to make sure it's safe, and so it should come back in some format so that we all understand what the actual plan is.
So
Okay.
Kevin will be working on.
And
getting
that
to
would be the
final-
responsibility of the Conservation Commission, I assume, at that point?
Yeah, correct.
Okay,
Okay.
that makes sense.
Okay, what,
And there are
Trace, do you
lots
have
of
that in your?
templates out there. I
Okay.
mean, Durham's has hunts going on, Regional Water Authority and other agencies, there's templates of the applications, the permits that they hand out, so we're not reinventing the wheel, so.
So, the understanding is that's going to rest with the Conservation Commission. Come back here with a final
Timetable stuff.
timetable and with the final procedure.
Details,
Okay,
procedures.
details.
With the goal to possibly look at the fall, but it all depends on the stuff we talked about in terms of.
Is there any further discussion, questions, comments? If not, I'll call for vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, unanimous. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your hard work. Appreciate it.
We'll plant some pumpkins, huh?
Public forum, limited to 3 minutes or any item. Anybody wishing to address the board? If not, I'll call for a motion to
Joe,
adjourn.
the only thing I will
Yes?
say, Paul May's out there, I think did he attend every meeting of your committee?
Said he missed two.
He was at every meeting I was at, so I assumed he was at
Well,
that many and more,
I
so.
think there was a period about a year ago he couldn't attend. And we know why. Okay.
Since we're off the record,
Well, we're not adjourned yet. We're not adjourned yet. Okay. I'll call,
Move we adjourn.
Second.
all those in favor? Aye. Thank you, everybody. Adjourn that.